Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Friday, November 1st. Over the last 2 weeks, we've seen precipitation mainly over the northern third of the Great Basin, across Idaho, Wyoming, and northern Utah. However, precipitation we have seen over the last 2 weeks has generally been well below normal for the time of year. Further south, we've seen very dry conditions over western and southern Nevada into the Arizona Strip and southern Utah, where many areas have not seen any precipitation in the last 30 to 60 days. Looking at new snowfall over the last 72 hours, you can see the new snowfall in the image on the left, generally in the higher terrain of central and northern Utah, in the mountains, and also over parts of southern Idaho into Wyoming. And you can see the image on the right where the snowpack exists, currently over central Idaho into Wyoming and also over northern Utah. However, looking at our current snowpack, the percent of normal, you can see we are seeing above normal conditions only in the central Idaho mountains and over far northern Utah into Wyoming, with general normal conditions over the rest of Idaho into the northern half of Utah. However, the Sierra into western Nevada and also over southern areas of the Great Basin, we're seeing well below normal snowpack due to the lack of precipitation. Looking at our evaporative demand drought index, you can see still dry conditions over the southern half of the Great Basin and much better conditions further north. Looking at our satellite image from this morning, you can see generally high pressure off the west coast, with the cold front that brought cool temperatures over the last couple of days and new snowfall is now well to the east over the northern plains, with generally northerly flow or light flow across the Great Basin and generally clear skies. Looking at our weather forecast for later today, you can see dry conditions across the Great Basin with a weak northwest to northerly flow over Idaho, Wyoming, and Utah. However, these wind conditions are generally very light, so we're seeing poor dispersion in most areas. The only areas seeing slightly breezier winds today will be over southern Nevada into southern Utah. And you can see the image on the left, the transport winds, showing these gustier winds over southern areas of Utah into southern Nevada. However, the rest of the Great Basin is generally seeing light to moderate winds. Mixing heights will remain on the low side across the Great Basin with cold temperatures, well below normal for the time of year. As we move through the weekend, we will see high pressure build off the west coast. This will bring still light winds to the area with dry conditions and also gradually warming temperatures and poor dispersion. You can see the transport winds, the image on the left showing light winds region-wide, and also low to moderate mixing heights across the Great Basin. On Sunday, very similar conditions with light winds and poor dispersion and gradually warming temperatures. And again, you can see the transport winds on the left and the mixing height on the right, showing very similar conditions throughout the weekend. However, temperatures will be gradually warming. Looking at the forecast clearing index for Utah, the center and right image show today and Saturday, and you can see the clearing index is a little bit higher today with those slightly breezier winds over southern Utah and over the higher terrain, but will be decreasing on Saturday as those winds decrease across the state. No precipitation is expected across the Great Basin for the next 3 days. As we move into early next week, you can see again very similar conditions, just high pressure dominating right along the west coast with lighter winds and dry conditions for the Great Basin along with poor dispersion. As we move into Tuesday, we do have a slight disturbance moving into Northern California and Oregon. Very little change, however, expected to the Great Basin with, again, dry conditions, lighter winds, and poor dispersion. And then that area of low pressure tracks across the Great Basin on Wednesday. We may see a slight increase in winds over southern Nevada into southern Utah, which might increase dispersion slightly as we move into the middle of next week. However, no precipitation is expected with this weak disturbance and a very slight change in temperatures. On Thursday, again, still very quiet conditions across the Great Basin. Forecast amount of precipitation as we move into early to the mid portion of next week. Still dry conditions expected for the next week, again, as no significant cold fronts will move through the region. Looking at the 8 to 14 day outlook, taking us from November 4th through the 14th, still looking at above normal temperatures and generally dry conditions for many areas of the Great Basin. However, towards the end of that period, towards the middle of November, we might start to see some areas of low pressure and cold fronts approach from the Pacific, which may bring some precipitation to the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, and possibly northern areas of the Great Basin. And we may see a better chance of some precipitation into the Great Basin as we get to the middle or late portion of November. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back on Monday for the latest updates.